So I've been sitting on part seven for a while. I recorded it almost 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't super happy with the recording. Um, I'm kind of fighting off a cold, so I apologize if I sound stuffed up and I'm sniffling. But I've listened to it a few times, part seven, and I'm going to go ahead and make a video for part seven with kind of an asterisk. Like this is kind of like part 7.5. Um, the more I listened to it, the more I realized I did kind of skim over a large chunk of stuff in fairly short time. So I kind of wanted to revisit some of the things that I talked about in part seven. And the more I listened to it, the more I thought about it. And at that time in my life, I didn't write a whole lot. I don't have any journals entries to pull um, details from. So there wasn't a whole lot going on, but the more I thought about it, I was laying in bed last night and I was thinking about it. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to make realizations of uh, what was going on. So um, I moved back home with my parents after my experience with the meth and the clubbing and just being done. And I tried to put my life back together. I so desperately wanted to get back to a normal life. I had kind of gone off the rails, and I knew it. I knew things had gotten out of control, and I was trying to rein myself back in. So January of 2003 rolls around, and I got a job. I got a job at New Ways. They're an MLM company. I don't even think they're called New Ways anymore. They're Modere or something now. But I got a job in their warehouse, driving forklifts, washing vats, and pre-weighing chemicals. Just really kind of brutal, well, brutal to me anyway, manual labor. Up to that point in my life, I had had a pretty cushy job, and I worked a 9 to 5 and worked at a desk all day. So to me, it was shitty manual labor, and I don't consider myself a puss by any stretches of the imagination, but it was kind of brutal work, and the hours I had to work were awful. They were getting ready to move into a new facility, and to shut down the production, um, they had to build up enough like back inventory so when they shut everything down and moved it to a new facility that they could continue selling their shit. So I was working from like 4:30 in the morning to 6:30 at night, just Monday through Friday. Just really long hours. Just it sucked. And it sucked bad. But I've always had a pretty good work ethic, and I went to work, and I wasn't late, and I showed up to work every day, and because was so determined to get my life back on track, and I knew that having a job was like the foundation of putting my life back together, and I needed to have steady income, and so I was determined to make that job work, even if the job was shitty, even though I had a girlfriend who required so much attention from me, and I had to feed her heroin addiction, and I had to feed my own heroin addiction. I I really stuck with it, and the more I thought about it last night when I was laying in bed, the more I was kind of impressed with myself that I stuck with it as long as I did. I stuck with it from January of 2003 to May of 2003, so for 5 months. And then they had us work 6 days a week, so I worked Monday through Saturday, 4:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. I would go home, shower, get the drugs, and hang out with Barbarella until crazy hours in the morning, get hardly any sleep at all, and then get up and go to work again. And not many junkies would do that for that long, and I ended up getting fired from that job. Like, I probably would have continued to do it um, if they wouldn't have drug tested me and fired me in the process, which I'm super glad they fired me because that job was killing me. It was literally killing me. I weighed like 140 pounds. I'm not a big guy, but 140 pounds is like extremely thin for me. I got even thinner as my addiction wore on, but I was just unhealthily skinny, and I wasn't sleeping, and I wasn't eating, and well, and there was the heroin addiction that didn't help. But I did that for 5 long months, and I stuck with it. You know, so way to go, 24-year-old dumbass me. Like you were really trying. Like I was trying so hard to live a normal life because for me, my addiction was just kind of a speed bump, just kind of like a mistake I made, and I would correct that mistake, and life would start up again, and life would be good again, and I could live a normal life. Like at that point, um, in my addiction, in my own mind, things weren't that bad. Like things were very much um, in a state where they could be fixed. And me hanging on to that job as long as I did was my attempt at, this is only temporary. This addiction is only temporary. What I am doing and what I'm going through is only temporary. And if I just act normal and keep doing normal things, that eventually I will get back on track. And that wasn't the case, but I tried so hard. I tried because I knew that wasn't the life for me. I knew it. I knew that wasn't me. I knew I was doing things that, you know, I shouldn't be doing. I wasn't raised that way. Um, so I knew better. I wasn't some stupid teenager. You know, I yeah, I was young. I was still, in my mind, I still considered myself a kid, but I was 24 years old. I was an adult. I knew what I was doing. So um, I knew that's not what I wanted out of life. And my biggest mistake, the more I think about it, was um, staying with Barbarella. She was an anchor around my neck. Like, she was really dragging me down, um, preventing me from moving forward. And I know that's terrible to say, but in a sense, she was, and uh, I still had the ability to make my own choices, and I made those choices. But if I would have been smart, I would have dumped her ass, and maybe that would have made a difference. Maybe it wouldn't have. Maybe I would have just ended up with some other chick that would have dragged me down, um, or maybe I would have drugged myself down. I have been known to do that in the past. So what if? Who knows? It's not what happened. So for months, I worked at that job, and like in my previous video, I talked about being drug tested and trying to fake my drug test with clean piss, and it didn't go over well. They did a hair follicle test, and they had found the heroin in my system, and they fired me. And I wanted to talk more about going on methadone because I kind of glossed over the whole methadone clinic thing. But the main reason why I went on methadone was my parents found out that I was a heroin addict. And I mean, they knew something was up. My family was going through uh, some drama, and so I kind of flew under the radar. But people in my family knew something was up. You know, I lost all that weight, and I did blame it on. I blamed a lot of it on the job that I had, but it officially came out that I was a heroin addict. Um, New Ways, when they terminated me, when they fired me, they sent a letter um, of termination to my house. And my mother opened up the letter and read that, oh, my drug test came back positive for heroin, and that's why they were firing me. They didn't even know that I was being canned. So it came out. My family made a pretty big deal about it. They didn't know how to handle it. Like, nobody in my family has ever struggled with substance abuse. And so they didn't know how to handle it. They had all this other drama that was going on, and then all my shitty drama was put on top of them, and they just didn't know how to handle it. Like oh, this was 2003, so it's not like you could just Google, my son's a drug addict. What do I do? I don't know, shit. Maybe you could have back then, but so methadone was like the big thing. Like your kid's a junkie, well, put him in a methadone clinic. Suboxone wasn't really a thing at that point, so methadone was kind of the only answer, and that was the answer my parents had, and they put me in a methadone clinic, which me by myself, it might just have worked, but I had Barbarella there with me. So I would go and dose in the morning at the ass crack of dawn. I would go line up with all these like other people that were going to dose. Let's just say they weren't exactly like the best people, but hey, they were there trying to get help. So, kudos to them. But I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb standing in line with my tucked in polo shirt waiting to get my methadone. So I would go and I would dose, and then I would go hang out with Barbarella all day. Well, she wasn't on methadone, and so she still had to use heroin, or else she would get sick. And so there's nothing to prevent somebody on methadone from using heroin. So I just kind of, well, she was using, so I would go dose in the morning, and then I would use with her. So it was kind of pointless to be doing methadone. And they would piss test you every once in a while, and it was really easily explained away. I mean, you just start crying to your counselor, and then they say, "Well, don't do it again," and then they dose you. And yeah, the methadone clinic, in all honesty, the privatized methadone clinic that I went to seemed very much about the money. Like that is all they cared about was the money. If you didn't show up with your money, you didn't fucking dose. And they would turn your ass away. Like you could be shitting yourself, you could be puking all over yourself, and they will turn you away unless you have cash or a money order to cover your week of methadone. It was really sad. Um, the whole methadone clinic thing was extremely sad and just just a terrible experience. But if Barbarella wouldn't have been there, I might just have lived a normal life from that point forward, because I was offered a job back at Key Labs as a contractor for part-time work, um, which to me was like, oh, that was my break. That was my big break that I had been waiting for, that I had been just hanging on tooth and nail for, because I knew if I just kept at it, that eventually I would get a break. And I thought that by going to my old boss at Key Labs and just bawling to him, and them giving me a second chance to come back and work and make some decent money and not have it be shitty manual labor, that I could I could finally get my shit together again. Like I just I had so many chances and opportunities to get my shit together, and I didn't. I let them just slip through my fingers. But anyway, I just hit the 15-minute mark. I wanted to revisit part 7, and um, I feel like I've done a fairly decent job at revisiting it and filling in some of the blanks that I wanted to discuss, um, that I just missed out on the first time I recorded it. And I didn't want to re-record it. I felt like there was uh, some good content and details there, but I felt like I left out a lot. So anyways, as always, thank you very much for listening, and yeah.